I'm Nicola Coughlan, and for BBC Radio 4, this is history's youngest heroes. Rebellion, risk, and the radical power of youth.
She thought, right, I'll just do it. She thought about others rather than herself.
12 stories of extraordinary young people from across history.
There's a real sense of urgency in them, that resistance has to be mounted, it has to be mounted now.
Follow History's Youngest Heroes wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Criminalia podcast. I'm Maria Tremarchi.
And I'm Holly Fry. Together, we invite you into the dark and winding corridors of historical true crime.
Each season, we explore a new theme, from poisoners to art thieves.
We uncover the secrets of history's most interesting figures, from legal injustices to body snatching.
And tune in at the end of each episode as we indulge in cocktails and mocktails inspired by each story.
Listen to Criminalia on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Misha Jones, a producer here at Wonder Media Network, and I'm so excited to be guest hosting this week's episodes of Womanica. This Black History Month, we're talking about Renaissance women. As part of the famed cultural and artistic Harlem Renaissance movement, these women found beauty in an often ugly world. Today, the spotlight is on a woman of words. In poems, plays, protest, and song, this womanican took the social issues of her time and transformed them into powerful language. This is the story of Georgia Douglas Johnson. Georgia was born in Atlanta, Georgia, around 1880 to Laura Douglas and George Camp. Her parents separated when she was young, leaving Georgia to turn inward. She immersed herself in learning and creativity, planting the seeds for a lifetime of curiosity and brilliance that would grow from within. In elementary school, Georgia was deemed the, quote, teacher's pet. She spent much of her time alone with her violin, which she quickly learned would be a more dependable friend than most of her peers. So began her love affair with music. After graduating school in 1893, Georgia began teaching. She later became an assistant principal at a school in Atlanta. Yet she itched for gratification that she wasn't getting at the front of the classroom. She yearned to make music. So, at the turn of the 20th century, she packed up her life and moved to Ohio to study music, harmony, and voice at the Oberlin Conservatory and the Cleveland College of Music. She began composing music for churches. Eventually, she discovered that her talents continued by way of words, and she began experimenting with writing, an outlet that would become her life's work. In 1903, Georgia married Henry Lincoln Johnson. He was a prominent attorney and 10 years her senior. In the first few years of marriage, Georgia gave birth to 2 sons. While her lifestyle began to shift as she raised 2 children, she did not put the pen down. If anything, her dedication to her craft grew stronger. Georgia began submitting stories and poems to local publications. She never sacrificed her passion, not for her husband and not for motherhood. A few years later, Henry was appointed as President Taft's Recorder of Deeds. So, in 1910, the family uprooted their life and relocated to Washington, D.C. This city would become the backdrop for Georgia's artistic awakening. As her husband's career progressed, so did hers. Records suggest that Henry desired a homemaker, a wife that would stay within the confines of her gender. But, of course, Georgia had other plans. She was busy publishing her first poems in the NAACP's Crisis magazine in 1916. Shortly after that, Georgia began publishing books of her own poetry. Her poetry was unique for its time. While many Harlem Renaissance writers celebrated Black cultural heritage, Georgia's instinct was self-reflection. She explored themes of love, identity, and the challenges of womanhood. Her debut collection, The Heart of a Woman, centered around themes of femininity and desire. Much of the public response was critical, questioning why the poems didn't mention Georgia's Blackness at all. In response to the criticism, Georgia published her second collection, Bronze, in 1922. This selection of poems engaged directly with her experiences as a Black woman, capturing the struggles of navigating the intersecting oppressions of race and gender. The collection was well received. Georgia also wrote over 20 plays, and her works often dealt with the grim realities of lynching. Though some of these plays were never formally produced, her works circulated widely in private readings and academic spaces, serving as powerful calls to action against racial violence. But one of the most outstanding elements of her life happened in the living room of her D.C. home. Georgia created an intellectual hub known as the S Street Salon. She transformed her living room into a beating heart of the Harlem Renaissance, farther down the East Coast. She welcomed in writers, thinkers, and activists of her time. Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and W.E.B. Du Bois were known for passing through. In describing the salon, Georgia said, "I'm half between everyone and everything, and I bring them all together." This is how the home got its alternate name, Halfway House. The S Street Salon existed for 40 years, creating history in a humble home. When her husband passed away in 1925, Georgia's life had to change. She was thrown into the workforce as a single parent, working a series of jobs to keep her and her sons afloat. But she never stopped writing. She published her final selection of poems in 1962, titled Share My World. Georgia passed away in 1966 in Washington, D.C. She was inducted into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame in 2010. At the end of her life, Georgia counted she'd written more than 200 poems, 20 plays, 30 songs, and edited around 100 books. She possessed incredible strength and determination. When she didn't want to teach, she left the classroom. When she wanted to study music, she followed her heart. She repeatedly chose herself. She was a Renaissance woman in every sense, a trailblazer whose power still echoes across generations. All month, we're talking about Renaissance women. For more information, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz and Jenny Kaplan for inviting me to guest host this show. Talk to y'all tomorrow.
I'm Nicola Coughlin, and for BBC Radio 4, this is history's youngest heroes. Rebellion, risk, and the radical power of youth.
She thought, right, I'll just do it. She thought about others rather than herself.
12 stories of extraordinary young people from across history.
There's a real sense of urgency in them, that resistance has to be mounted, it has to be mounted now.
Follow History's Youngest Heroes wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Criminalia podcast. I'm Maria Tremarchi.
And I'm Holly Fry. Together, we invite you into the dark and winding corridors of historical true crime.
Each season, we explore a new theme, from poisoners to art thieves.
We uncover the secrets of history's most interesting figures, from legal injustices to body snatching.
And tune in at the end of each episode as we indulge in cocktails and mocktails inspired by each story.
Listen to Criminalia on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.